Intel's Q2 earnings was pretty amazing. Their revenue was up 20% year on year, and their earnings per share was up 29% year on year in the same period. But since announcing those earnings, their share price went from $60 to $48, decreasing by close to 20%. And on top of that, AMD, since Intel have declined, their share price actually went up by close to 15 to 16%. So how does that make sense? In this video, let's talk about AMD stock versus Intel stock and whether there is a definitive winner between these two. As usual, don't use this video as financial advice. And if you learn something brand new, just gently smash that like button right there, and that will mean the world to me. So without further ado, let's go. Let's address the elephant in the room. Intel delivered great Q2 earnings. So then why did the share price went from $60 to about 47 in a span of a day? Well, it turns out in their Q2 earnings call, Intel has announced that they are delaying their 7nm chip and most likely shipping those products in late 2022 or early 2023. But what shocked the market the most is Intel coming out to say that they are relying on third-party foundries like Samsung or Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company to help them catch up with the 7nm chip. Now that is a big deal because Intel was always known as the leader who designed and manufactured their own chips. And mind you, some of the best CPU chips in the world. Now, regardless of the nanometers of the chips, investors reacted negatively to the repeated delays that has allowed others to catch up. And compounding that with Intel announcing that they're relying on third-party foundries to help them catch up to manufacturing, those are the major reasons why the share price went from $60 to about $48, reducing by about 20%. Now it's easy to jump in and say that it's
completely over for Intel and AMD will take over from here.
Truth is, there's more to it. So let me show you. For a fair comparison, let's focus on CPU chips, since that's the market both AMD and Intel are both actively participating in. And generally speaking, whenever I'm comparing or looking for a stock to invest in, I try to build a story by answering these three questions. Do they have a product customers love? Can they scale profitably? And what are some of the key risks that I need to know? And is there any that would deter me from investing in that stock? And based on how confident I am about the story, I'll usually move on or pull the trigger investing in the stock. If we take a look at the desktop market share, it was once dominated by Intel, no doubt about it. But ever since AMD have launched their Ryzen series in 2016, they have slowly chipped away their market share, and very soon I anticipate that AMD will overtake Intel in the desktop market space. What's really interesting about this space is that with modern PC builds, people are looking to add live streaming capabilities to their desktop PCs. And according to forums and different PC enthusiasts, AMD CPUs tend to outperform Intel CPUs in both price and also performance. For laptops, Intel still have enormous market share, mostly because they have incredible support with their products. Not to mention, laptop manufacturers are very resistant to change, since implementing a new CPU in hundreds of thousands of laptops is no small task and very expensive. But as the community recognize that AMD CPUs are far more superior when it comes to performance and also value, not to mention it extends the battery life of laptops, there's a growing demand for AMD laptops. And we're starting to witness that. On the server market side, this is essentially the CPUs used in data centers. Intel absolutely dominates that space. The barrier to entry is so sky high that the risk of downtime in data centers will cost enterprise customers thousands of dollars per hour. So as you can imagine, during the pandemic, it is very unlikely for any enterprise customers who need to scale their infrastructure to meet the demand for cloud computing to go try something new like AMD. So does Intel and AMD have products customers love? Absolutely. AMD have won the hearts of retail consumers, and that has translated in market share in both the laptop space and also the desktop space. Now on the other hand, Intel's reliability and also support have continuously helped them to dominate the server market space. So let's contextualize that with actual financials and see whether both companies can scale profitably. Since Intel design and manufacture their own chips, they should have better gross margins than AMD. And as we can see here, the blue line is Intel, and their gross margins is anywhere between 55 to about 60. And on the other hand, for AMD, they sit at approximately 45 to about 40. As long as Intel is getting help from a third-party foundry, it's very likely that the gross margins will decrease over time and somewhat get closer to AMD gross margins. If we take a look at a comparison between their profit margins, AMD has a single-digit profit margin compared to Intel's 20% plus profit margin. Now, remember that Intel is a blue chip, very, very mature company, whereas AMD in this scenario is considered as a growth company. On top of that, the increase in AMD's market share in both laptops and desktop space have translated in a revenue growth of 30% year on year. Now, it's no surprise that Intel is growing at 12% considering that majority of the world's data centers are using Intel chips. Most importantly, as both companies grow their revenue substantially, their gross margins have either improved or stabilized, which is the ultimate sign that a company can scale profitably. Let's dig a little deeper into both companies' balance sheet just to make sure they have enough resources to weather the storm and scale in the future. Now, from a single glance, this is AMD's balance sheet, and they have enough short-term assets that cover both short-term liabilities and long-term liabilities. So they should have no problem weathering the storm in the very, very short term. Similarly, for Intel, they have enough current assets to cover their current liabilities. And I just want to make a note here that they have $44 billion worth of current assets and $25 billion of which is cash. So they should have no problem weathering the storm in the very short term. This is the ultimate David versus Goliath battle between AMD and Intel. Both companies have products customers absolutely love, and both have proved that they are able to scale profitably. But Intel have done it longer, and they have done it in a significantly bigger scale. Intel's revenue is almost 10 times AMD's, and Intel's balance sheet is so big that they will have very little issues dealing with any external shocks in the next 2 to 3 years. So then does that mean that Intel is a no-brainer investment given the current share price correction? No, and this is the key part to this story. Before we get into the key part of this story, I want to let you know that I have started a Patreon account. If you found my videos to be super helpful and you want to support me continuously making great content for you, consider supporting this channel via Patreon. Being a Patreon means that you get access to my private Discord server where I upload a lot of my research documents, as well as where I do a lot of daily or even weekly stock market updates. On top of that, I do exclusive Q&As with the Discord members just so that I can get to know them better, as well as any way that I could help the community to become a better investor, I will go ahead and do that. So if that's something that you're interested in, I'll leave a link in the description box below. Now, the last part to this story is to acknowledge and be aware of the key risks inside both businesses. Let's start with Intel. One of the key risks is that the CEO, the person at the helm, is not an engineer by background, but an MBA. Well, why is that a big deal? Intel's core business is in semiconductors. In Intel's early successes, especially the ND growth era, was focused on innovation, bold bets, and he has a chemical engineering background. And he helped Intel to become one of the world's most important companies. Now, this is not to say the current CEO will not do a good job, but you're in an industry that expects you to make a bold, innovative bet 5 years out. Not to mention, you're going up against Dr. Lisa Su from AMD, who has an engineering background in MIT, and she lives and breathes semiconductors. And if you've been following me, you know that I deeply value the person at the helm of the organization because that has a cascading effect for the rest of the company. And since Dr. Lisa Su have taken the helm of AMD in 2014, she has turned this company around to become a legitimate contender to Intel. And Elon Musk have famously said that the path to the CEO's office should not be through the CFO's office, and it should not be through the marketing department. It needs to be through engineering and design. Look, it doesn't mean that AMD is perfect either. Intel's long-standing track record and reliability in the server market is one of the major reasons why customers are very resistant to change. Even though things are slowly shifting with AMD working closely with Google, Oracle, and AWS, but to what extent can AMD penetrate the server market? And another common criticism of AMD is Dr. Lisa Su selling some of her stocks. If we stop there and added no context, that will seem like the management thinks the share price is too high. I just want to show you that Dr. Lisa Su have close to 3 million shares as of 13th of August 2020. Every so often, she'll sell about 150,000 shares. But frankly speaking, she's a human too. And she might want to lock in a bit of wealth or maintain a certain share ratio in her portfolio. So that's really not a problem in my opinion. The market is big enough for both Intel and AMD to coexist. And after seeing Dr. Lisa Su took the helm in 2014 and literally make the impossible happen, and how the PC enthusiasts have complained about Intel chips over the years, I decided on the 9th of April to initiate a position in AMD at approximately $49. It's just because I think that AMD will give Intel a very good run for their money. But that's just AMD's CPU business. What about their graphics card business against Nvidia? That's a video for another day. If you want to see that video, make sure you gently smash that like button right there. And if this video gets 1,000 likes, I'll create a full video on that. And make sure you subscribe to my channel and click onto the bell so that when I release my next video, you'll be the first one to know. Until next time, my name is David. Auto will always do the honors, and see you very, very soon.